17-year-old Spencer Kimbro is one of the most decorated athletes in Washington State high school history. It's pretty amazing when you consider he and his parents were told by many he wouldn't live long enough to even go to high school. In this week's Prep Zone, Egan and photojournalist Alan Reed traveled to Moses Lake to share Spencer's journey.
Nice.
Moses Lake Spencer Kimbro was one of the most recruited basketball players in the Northwest, with nearly a dozen Division I schools knocking at his door.
I love basketball, and that's like my passion.
He's a player that's one of my starters that I can play the whole game.
Next year, Spencer will play for the Crimson Tide. Alabama is one of 12 schools in the nation that sponsor wheelchair athletics.
There you go.
Spencer had always talked about going to Alabama. And you know, when you have a kid in Central Washington going, I want to go to Alabama, you go, that's a good dream. That's nice.
But it's a dream that had a nightmarish start.
He wasn't expected to live. And our doctor came in and said, we think it's spina bifida. Well, we had seen on the ultrasound that there was a leg missing and some other things going on. And so then they sent us to Spokane. And that's when the doctor up there told us that he wasn't going to live. And that's hard. My dad, see, I never talk about it. He looked at the doctor and said, but when he does. She goes, well, he's not. And he goes, but when he does. And he did.
Moments after his birth, the family had a decision to make. Doctors suggested they take their newborn to Seattle Children's Hospital.
There's just those little moments in time that have changed things, and that one decision to send him to Children's was the biggest decision we ever made.
You know, the first thing we get there, and there's a couple doctors that say, hey, we're going to be the quarterback of everything, don't worry, you know, we'll take care of this. And
they did. But growing up with a disability can be difficult. Spencer became frustrated about his condition and the way he looked.
I had a lot of issues with talking to people and being around people and just not really feeling like I fit in. So I was falling into depression.
He hated being the disabled kid, and his attitude affected his health. At 10, Spencer's lung capacity went down to less than 65%, and he was back at Children's.
And he flatlined 3 times. And they said, you need to come down here. It was at 3 in the morning or something like that. And they said, you need to come down here because if he goes again, we can't save him.
But once again, they did. Still, Spencer was searching for an identity.
I was just really frustrated because growing up, I watched my sisters. They played softball, they played soccer, you know, and I haven't done anything.
Spencer's life would take a turn when he started competing in sports. It was on these Little League fields in Moses Lake where he would begin his athletic career.
You know, every year there's a Little League draft, and there was a coach that he was his #1 pick.
It wasn't the parents being, oh, isn't it cute, we have the kid in the wheelchair wanting to play. They actually supported him as an athlete.
It was awesome. I made so many friends through that, and I think people kind of changed the way they looked at me.
After Little League, Spencer would find parasport in Spokane. Over a 3-year span, Spencer won 10 state track championships. He took home silver at the U.S. National Championships and competed at the Pan Am Games. Spencer was becoming an elite para-athlete, but he was also training nearly 7 days a week.
1. Good job, man. Woo. And one thing I tell him when we're training is this is the work that people don't want to do. They don't see this work, and this is the work that's going to separate him from anyone else in his class.
While Spencer continued to win track medals, he also fell in love with another sport.
Find what you enjoy and latch onto that, because that's what I've done, and that's what has gotten me this far.
My mom would always say that God didn't give you anything more than you could handle, and it's like, seriously think you overshot this one. And just knowing that his whole being was intentional and that there's something else out there for him.
In Moses Lake, Egan, King 5 Sports.
Inspirational all the way around. Spencer's future school, Alabama, won its 2nd national championship in men's wheelchair basketball in March. Besides basketball and track, Spencer also now does para hockey, and he still holds the state track record in the 400-meter.